All the stars in the sky were dissolved, and the heavens rolled up like a scroll. All the starry host will fall like withered leaves from the vine, like shriveled figs from the fig tree. What do you think this verse is talking about, and where does it come from in the Bible? Surely it's the book of Revelation. Surely it's to do with the end of the world, right? Wrong. This verse is found in Isaiah 34:4, with verse 5 and 6 describing God's judgment upon the nation of Edom. My sword was drunk. It fills the heavens. See, it descends in judgment on Edom. The people I have totally destroyed. The sword of the Lord is bathed in blood. It is covered with fat, the blood of lambs and goats, fat from the kidneys of rams. For the Lord has a sacrifice in Bozrah and a great slaughter in the land of Edom. Isaiah 34, 5-6. The Edomites were the descendants of Esau, the brother of Jacob, who sold his birthright for a portion of meat. They ended up being the enemies of Israel and wouldn't even let them pass through their land when Moses was bringing God's people into Canaan land. These people lived in high cliffs and caves, thinking they were impregnable, but God foretold their destruction. Now look at these similar verses. Surely these are from the book of Revelation, especially talking about the stars not giving their light and the sun going dark and the moon not giving its light. It also speaks of the earth shaking out of its place. See, the day of the Lord is coming, a cruel day with wrath and fierce anger, to make the land desolate and destroy the sinners within it. The stars of heaven and their constellations will not show their light. The rising sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light. I will punish the world for its evil, the wicked for their sins. I'll put an end to the arrogance of the haughty, and will humble the pride of the ruthless. I will make people scarcer than pure gold, more rare than the gold of Ophir. Therefore I'll make the heavens tremble, the earth will shake from its place at the wrath of the Lord Almighty, in the day of his burning anger. These are from Isaiah 13, 9-13. And describe the destruction of Babylon by the Medes and the Persians. We see the interpretation of this in verses 17 and 19. This descriptive language speaks of political powers being shaken, the sun and the moon being those in authority. See, I will stir up against them the Medes, who do not care for silver and have no delight in gold. Their bows will strike down the young men. They will have no mercy on infants, nor will they look for compassion on children. Babylon, the jewel of the kingdoms, the pride and glory of the Babylonians, will be overthrown by God like Sodom and Gomorrah. Here is another portion of scripture from Ezekiel about the imminent invasion of Israel by the Babylonians. When I snuff you out, I will cover the heavens and darken their stars. I will cover the sun with a cloud, and the moon will not give its light. All the shining lights in the heavens I will darken over you. I will bring darkness over your land, declares the sovereign Lord. I will trouble the hearts of many people when I bring about your destruction among the nations, among the lands you have not known. I will cause many peoples to be appalled at you, and their kings will shudder with horror because of you when I brandish my sword before them. On the day of your downfall, each of them will tremble, every moment for his life. For this is what the sovereign Lord says, the sword of the king of Babylon will come against you. Ezekiel 32, 7-11. Again it talks of the sun, the moon being darkened. This is symbolic of higher powers being brought down, which would be those in authority. Look at Genesis 37:9 and Genesis 37:10. Joseph had the dream of the sun, the moon, and the stars bowing down to him. Joseph's father said to him, "Does this mean that I and your mother and brothers will bow down to you?" He knew what it meant. Why am I showing you these verses? It's to give you a deeper understanding of Bible prophecy and open up Old Testament scriptures to show how they can mean more than just talking about the end of the world. In the days before the cross, the powers that were fought against were nations such as Babylon and Assyria, etc. But now we are told that we are not fighting against flesh and blood anymore, but spiritual forces in heavenly places. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms, Ephesians 6:12. When you understand this principle, it helps you to see what God is talking about in some of the end-time scriptures, as it's often talking about shaking of the heavens with stars falling. Good angels and Satan, the fallen angel, and his demons are often talked about as stars. On what were its footing set, or who laid its cornerstone? While the morning stars sang together, and all the angels shouted for joy. Job 38:6-7. How you have fallen, morning star, son of the dawn! You have been cast down to the earth, you who once laid low the nations. Isaiah 14:12. This is talking about Lucifer in these verses. He is also called the angel of light. Then another sign appeared in the heavens, an enormous red dragon with 7 heads and 10 horns, 7 crowns on his heads. Its tail swept 1/3 of the stars out of the sky and flung them down to the earth. The dragon stood in front of the woman who was about to give birth, so that it might devour her child the moment he was born. Revelation 12:3-4. For instance, when it talks about shaking the heavens and the earth, it can be talking about the fall of principalities and powers over a nation, which then brings about revival. In the Welsh revival, those powers were brought down and were unable to stop people going to church anymore. There are spiritual powers over the nations, as we see in the book of Daniel. Daniel was seeking God and fasting and prayer when an angel came to him and showed him end-time events. The angel came to him and said, Then he continued, Do not be afraid, Daniel, since the first day that you set your mind to gain understanding and to humble yourself before your God, your words were heard, and I have come in response to them. But the prince of the Persian kingdom resisted me 21 days. Then Michael, one of the chief princes, came to help me, because I was detained there with the king of Persia. Now I have come to explain to you what will happen to your people in the future, for the vision concerns a time yet to come. Daniel 10:12-14. There was a spiritual power over Persia, which soon fell, enabling the next kingdom to arise in the earth, which was Greece. Mountains, Mount Zion, can mean the church. But you have come to Mount Zion, to the city of the living God, the heavenly Jerusalem, to an innumerable company of angels, to the general assembly, the church of the firstborn. Hebrews 12:22. The word that Isaiah the son of Amos saw concerning Judah and Jerusalem, and it shall come to pass in the last days that the mountain of the Lord's house shall be established at the top of the mountains, shall be exalted above the hills, and all nations shall flow into it. And many people shall go and say, Come, let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of the God of Jacob, and he will teach us of his ways, and we will walk in his paths. For out of Zion shall go forth the law, and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. Isaiah 2:1-3. Mountains can be talking about the church. Look also at Daniel chapter 2 concerning the image of Nebuchadnezzar. While we were watching, a rock was cut out, but not by human hands. It struck the statue on its feet of iron and clay and smashed them. Then the iron, the clay, the bronze, the silver, the gold were all broken to pieces and became like chaff on a threshing floor in the summer. The wind swept them away without leaving a trace, but the rock that struck the statue became a huge mountain and filled the whole earth. Daniel 2:34-35. In that day the mountains will drip new wine, and the hills will flow with milk. All the ravines of Judah, praise, will run with water. A fountain will flow out of the Lord's house and will water the valley of acacias. Joel 3:18.